Okay, Josh, when it comes to the third level or order of angels, can you please mention those three and also give us some details about them, please?
Yes. Okay. So this is the third choir of the angelic hierarchy, and this is the one that is thought to be the lowest of all of the choirs. And again, that's not necessarily because they're not as important, they're lower in rank, or aren't as powerful, but because they have different God ordained roles. They are in the furthest proximity from God. They are what I would call the terrestrial beings. And that doesn't mean that they're humans. That just means that they are the ones who occupy human space. It seems the most whenever we look at the Bible. And so these are the principalities, these are the archangels, these are the angels. And so let's kind of get into it. So, principalities, they are the first spiritual being in the choir of this third choir of angels. And in Greek, they are the arche. And basically, what arche means, it means governor, it means magistrate, it means ruler. And you see that used that way in Luke 12:11. Now, whenever we look at arche, it belongs to the same semantic subdomain as archon. And, I don't know if people are familiar with archon. That's used in a lot of post-biblical literature, even, Gnostic literature, that kind of thing. But it's related to this topic. But whenever we look at the scriptures, we see that these spiritual beings are closely related with rulership of geographical areas, right? The idea of rulership over geographical areas where men reside, where nations are at. And so they're very closely tied with the idea of territorial spirits. So one of the places where we see this spelled out explicitly in the Bible is in Daniel 10:18-21. There, the prophet Daniel has an encounter with a spiritual being, and we'll just go ahead and read the text. It says this. Again, he touched me, the one in the form of a human, and he strengthened me. And he said, "You must not fear, O beloved man. Peace be to you. Be strong and be courageous." And when he spoke with me, I was strengthened, and I said, "Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me." And then he asked, "Do you know why I have come to you? I now return to fight against the prince of Persia. And I myself am going. And look, the prince of Javan." Now, if people are unfamiliar with Javan, go back to the Table of Nations in Genesis chapter 10. Javan is what would later on become Greece. So some translations actually render Javan as Greece. But it says, "The prince of Javan or Greece will come. However, I tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth, that there is not one who contend with me against these beings, except Michael, your prince." So here we learn that there were particular angelic beings in charge of nations, particularly Persia and Greece or Javan, and even Israel here in this text. Now, the term prince, because it's the prince of Persia, the prince of Javan, and the prince of Israel, the term prince is related to the term principality or arche in Greek. A principality, for those who don't know, is a nation state that's ruled over by a prince. Now, for us living in America, that's a very foreign idea to us. But in our American kind of modern context, you can kind of think about it as being similar as a municipality, right? So a municipality is ruled over by municipal officers, right? Like that's going to be, your mayor and all of those types of people. Like it's very similar. Like we still have similar language, but that's what a principality is. It's a nation state ruled over by a prince, and this is what these places were. This is what Greece and Persia and all these places were. Now, this thought's also present in the Second Temple period as well, especially in the Enochian literature. So First Enoch 61:10 says this: "He will summon all the host of heaven." So Enoch's talking about God gathering his host, the divine council. "He will summon the host of heavens and all the holy ones above, and the host of God, the cherubic, the seraphim, and Ophanan, and all the angels of power." So we're seeing all kinds of beings named from that angelic hierarchy here. "And all of the angels of principalities and the elect one, and the other powers on the earth and over the water. So beings here associated with the elements, but not just that, but the angels of principality, the ones who are over the nations, right? So it's not just in the Bible; it's also in the Second Temple literature surrounding the Bible as well. It's also in First Enoch chapter 6 as well. And that's the narrative of the fallen angels lusting after the daughters of men, the angels who create the giants. They're called chiefs. Okay, and it's the same thing. So if you look at that narrative, it talks about the chiefs being there. And so commenting on that, the DDD says this in First Enoch 6:8, which is preserved in Greek and Aramaic, in addition to Ethiopian. Arche is used of 20 named angels or watchers, each of whom commands 10 angels of lesser status. This angelic organization appears to have a military origin. For the Israelite army was arranged under leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. See Exodus 18:21, 25, Deuteronomy 1:15, 1 Maccabees 3:55, and the Dead Sea Scrolls 1 QM 3:16 through 17. Josephus refers to the organization of the Maccabean army in 1 Maccabees 3:55 as the old traditional manner. So you can find that in Antiquities 12.301. In the LXX, the Septuagint, Exodus 18:21 through 25, and 1 Maccabees 3:55 uses the term deca-arche, and it's used for commanders of the lowest level of military organization, which was common in the Hellenistic world. So you can see that in Xenophon and Polybus and Josephus and several other people. But basically what it's getting at here is this was a way that militaries were structured back in the ancient day. It's in the Israelites' history. It's in the Greek world, and so that's what's going on here with this. These principalities are rulers over geographical regions, and so that's what they do. So, now I won't spend as much time on these. These are the ones that we're more familiar with, especially if I ask you about angels. These are the ones that everybody typically knows. So archangels, they're the second spiritual being in the choir of angels. And it's interesting. They're called the archangels. So you've kind of got the arche from the principalities, and then the angelos from the angels. So it's like they're in between. And Aquinas speaks to that, which we'll get to in a minute. But in Greek, they're the archangelos. And there's two archangels mentioned in the Bible. Those are Michael and Gabriel. Most are familiar with Michael. Gabriel's one that's a little less familiar. He appears in the book of Daniel 8:16 and 9:21. And whenever we look at scripture, that these are the angels that have been tasked with keeping watch over God's people. So there's the arche part. And they're also acting as announcing important messages to humanity, right? And that's what angels do. That's what malach in Hebrew means. That's what angelos in Greek means. They are messengers. So they have the prince part, the arche part, the arch part, and then they have the angelos part. So they are like divine messengers who are also princes over God's people, protect God's people, is kind of what you can think of. And so Aquinas in Summa Theologiae, he says it this way. The archangels, according to Dionysius, are between the principalities and the angels. A medium compared to one extreme seems to be like the other, as participating in the nature of both extremes. Thus, tepid seems cold compared to hot, and hot compared to cold. So the archangels are called the angel princes, for as much as they are princes as regard to angels, and angels in regards to the principalities. But according to Gregory, they are called archangels because they preside over one order of the angels, as it were, announcing greater things. So, Aquinas is kind of getting at that there. He's using an analogy of tepid and hot and cold, and he's, how this kind of participates in both extremes. And, that's what he's drawing that analogy to say that this is what the archangels do. They're participating in the arche part and the messenger part. So that's what's going on with that. So that's what archangels do. and that's what their role in there. And then angels, obviously, that's malak in Hebrew, that's angelos in Greek, and they're the messengers. They're the ones who proclaim news from heaven to humanity. Right? We see that all throughout the scriptures. They are the ones who seem to be in the closest proximity to humans, and so that's the heavenly hierarchy.